Hi, and welcome to the Mavericks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Chris Chamberlin, and this is the place to be to get unstuck, unleash your superpowers, and create a world that works for all. On this podcast, we speak to Mavericks who inspire us to get the insight and wisdom from their story to help you get the clarity, courage, and conviction that you need to make your mark on the world. This week's guest is Chris Chamberlin, the General Manager of Effect Partners. For 20 years, Chris worked in marketing and communication agencies supporting environmental causes. However, in May 2017, he went through a huge life pivot when he left his mainstream career to become U2 Sustainability Manager for the Joshua Tree 30th Anniversary World Tour. In this interview, we hear the story of a real-life maverick following his purpose and his passion and making it his work in the world. Chris tells us of the huge rewards of doing this, as well as the many challenges that inevitably come up from making the leap and leaving behind an established career. So with that, let's get to it. So hi Mavericks, Chris here with yet another podcast in our Unleashing Superpowers series. And I'm really pleased to welcome our good friend Chris Chamberlin of Effect Partners with us. So hi Chris, how are you today?
Hey Chris, I'm doing fantastic, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, really well. After all of our attempts to connect around the world and all that, we got here in the same place at the same time, so that's great. So Chris, obviously we've spoken before, but obviously no one out there has heard. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, what you're up to in the world?
Yeah, you bet. So I have spent the last couple of decades as a agency guy, mostly in the public relations and marketing arena. My core passion for a long time and an area of subject matter expertise has been in the sustainability department. And while I hate the word sustainability, let me just give a little bit more definition. I'm a diehard. I'm passionate about the environment. I think climate change is the most pressing issue facing humanity today. And I've worked really hard in all aspects around that issue in the multitude of ways that impacts people around the world, helping steer corporations, brands, marketers to try to figure out how they can not only reorient their business operations to be less impactful around the environment, but more importantly, how to take what is often a very complex and jargon-filled subject matter and really resonate with everyday people so that they understand how their businesses impact the environment, how they can work together to lighten the load, and how we can all do a little bit better to make our humanity survive the next couple decades.
That would be quite a useful thing to do, wouldn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah, sure would. Nothing less than saving the planet. That's all. That's all.
Well, I mean, look, let's face it, it's a reality, right? And I think, what I love there that you've just said is, as you say, this is a whole issue that's filled with jargon. I think a lot of people out there feel very powerless because they sort of don't know what to do, or there's too much to do, or that kind of thing. And it's one of those subjects that's kind of loaded with, I don't know, with all sorts of landmines, I guess. So what are you? So you're with Effect Partners now. I mean, we spoke to Mike Martin, the founder, a couple of years ago, actually. So you've kind of done this journey from agency into more of the stuff around climate change. So what are you up to now? What does that look like for you right now?
Yeah, interesting. So just kind of bridge back to what you just mentioned there. Anybody that has worked really hard in environmental issues, climate change, sustainability, it can be a very frustrating, very depressing at times subject matter and profession to be a part of. There's a lot of big issues that need a lot of big solutions, and it is hard to kind of break through the noise and nonsense that is filled around a lot of these topics. I think a lot of folks that work in this space hit a rather big kind of obstacle several years ago. I kind of threw up my hands and just gave up. So I kind of reverted back into more of a traditional marketing role and really kind of still in that field. But I really kind of backed off working on climate and sustainability issues because I just wasn't really seeing the type of progress that I thought really was needed to move the needle forward, if you will. So that led me to a major life moment just about May of last year. I can't believe it's been less than a year.
Wow.
where I, where I, through a sequence of events, I broke away from the agency I'd been working with at the time. Kind of found myself in one of those life moments of, here in my mid 40s, what am I here to do? What's my next chapter? Where do I go from here? And I really reconnected with this deep desire to get back in the fight and really focus on environmental issues full time and start to align my profession with my personal desires. And reached out to my longtime buddy Mike Martin. He and I had been long talking about writing a book together, and since I was newly unemployed, if you will, I let him know I had plenty of time to write that book. As luck would have it, he was in need of a partner to take on what is still a job I think is rather silly even to say, but what turned out to be a dream job for me for the summer, which was to travel the world with Bono and the crew with U2 and be the sustainability director for the Joshua Tree tour,
Wow.
which took me around the world and back again, and got to kind of not only hustle behind the scenes with recycling bins and water refill stations, but more importantly, I just got to be around 60, 70,000 people a night. From Rome to Cleveland, Ohio, and just saw so much energy and passion and interest in and really working together on small and big things on climate and sustainability. So it was just a major reignition switch for my soul, and that tour concluded back this fall, and Mike and I decided we were having so much fun together, it was time to go into business together full time. So as of literally just a few weeks ago, I am now on board as the general manager, working side by side with Mike to take our mission further.
Wicked. I love that. And Chris, there are so many things in there that I want to pick up on. So I'm going to try and sort of do them in a sequence, as it were. So the first thing I really want to pick up on, there's such a lot of richness here, is you were talking about, like, as you say, being in the 40s, like last May, you had this, this pivot moment, as it were, which I think, a lot of us in our 40s have of, what am I doing? There's got to be more to life. I had these ideals, but I'm kind of stuck in this kind of mainstream life, as it were. But I think, a lot of people, and a lot of our listeners will resonate with this. There comes that moment, doesn't there, of, am I going to do something or not? So in that moment, what was it that enabled you to essentially, I don't know, step off the precipice or take flight or, whatever that is? I think different people have different metaphors for that moment. But what was it enabled you personally to pivot and start really following this kind of sense of purpose and passion?
First and foremost, a partner for life and my wife, who really encouraged me to get off my butt and get back into what I was really supposed to do and really care a lot about. So that I credit where it's due. She really was a huge motivating force for me. When I really sat down in that moment where I had suddenly an open field to determine kind of what my next move was going to be, I kind of did one of those classic risk reward charts. What was the highest risk, highest reward path that I felt I could go on, and again, thanks to my partner and a lot of kind of soul searching, I just felt, if not now, when to take on that top box and go after the highest risk, highest reward option that was on my chart. And it just so happens, and this is a true story, that was literally the name Mike Martin was listed at the top of that chart. And, off I went. I literally, called him, within a few hours or so, and sent him a note about this, writing this book. And it's, literally it's just one of those too crazy to be true type of stories where he was suddenly in need for somebody to join the U2 tour, and I just happened to reach out right at that same time. So
wow,
it kind of was it was kind of it was just one of those moments that it was just kind of meant to be, and it felt like it was meant to be, even if I didn't really know where it was going to lead in the end. And frankly, I've been riding that wave ever since, and have no interest in looking back.
So here you are, gone from kind of agency guy of 20 or so years, kind of, even though, as you say, you were working in kind of the area of ecology, sustainability, climate change kind of before. But let's face it, as kind of, mainstream business people, it can be, we can be very scheduled, can't we? Or, there are certain expectations. And then suddenly you're in this moment of, hey, this is meant to be. I'm riding this wave. So how have you kind of managed that shift, as it were, from, regular mainstream kind of agency guy, as it were, to man following his passion and, doing what you want, what you're driven to do in the world?
Yeah, it's I wish I had like a magic formula. It's it's been interesting. It's I've just gotten into this flow where as long as it feels good, I'm just going to keep going and not stop long enough to figure out why does it feel good, and let myself get bogged too much down in the rationale. I think for me, and I know a lot of my mates in various professions and career tracks. I stayed in a very comfortable place for a very long time and didn't really feel the confidence or even the I don't know what it is, the freedom maybe to kind of put myself outside of a comfort zone. And I think once I allowed myself to do that and saw the rewards, and a lot of those rewards, frankly, were just kind of mental rewards, feeling really energized by the work that I was doing, feeling challenged creatively, feeling empowered with autonomy and a really clear and crystal clear sense of purpose. And I think I really hadn't felt that, though I was very proud of the work I was doing for a long time, never really felt that kind of mixture on an everyday basis. So, that's really what has been kind of the motivating force is just, it feels, the energy feels just rich and clear. And it's been quite a run.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And what I love is, and correct me if I'm wrong around this kind of track of events, but it sounds like, sometimes when we have these moments, it's because we're presented with an opportunity, and the choice is between our current life and the opportunity that stands in front of us. But with you, it sounds like you had to make the decision that you were going to make a change first, and then the opportunity, in this case with Mike and with you too, kind of came almost the moment you made the decision, but you had to make the decision first. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. I was certainly forced into that moment. The sequence of events that led up to that was, really, I was in a pretty down moment. I'd spent, a better part of a decade with the agency I'd been working with, and it was a very mutual, agreement that it was time for us to split. I had actually come to Asia for my first expat assignment out here in Hong Kong, and had suddenly within a period of a couple months, was staring at the prospect of having to go home, having to go back to the States, and having to go back without an employer, without a job.
Wow.
Jobless in Asia.
Wow.
Was not the plan. So
sure.
When you're staring out over Victoria Harbor in a strange land, trying to wrap your head around how did I get here and where are we going now, and how did it become so quick and sudden that we didn't have this safety blanket around us that we had for so long. It really kind of obviously forced me into, all right, either I can sit here and feel sad for myself, or I can just kind of do what I've always done, which is, just go find the next agency gig and get on with it. Or I can, again, be really intentional and craft a clear sense of a purpose-driven strategy that is going to I'm just going to follow. And that's what I decided to do. And again, it's just been such an enriching, challenging, but just incredibly grateful for all that's happened since then. It's just been a great lesson for me on being very intentional in my life, and again, very, very clearly purpose driven.
So let's track forward a little bit from the moment of that decision to, there aren't many people who can say, they're the first gig that they do after they make a pivot moment is, I'm just going to go traveling around the world with U2.
Yeah.
So what was that like? I mean, it was the 20th anniversary of the Joshua Tree, right?
I'm going to age you a little bit, buddy. Actually, it was the 30th anniversary.
30th? Oh my God!
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Oh my God! There's me trying to, I'm hanging on to youth, as it were. So 30th. Yeah. So what was that like?
Yeah, it was crazy. We all love music. We all have our bands. We all have our records that are definitive for us. This album and this band for me is near the top of my list. And I probably would only have taken a job like this with about 3 other bands, and U2 is one of them. It sounds I think for a lot of people when I share the story, they just they're just amazed by it, and of course it's all the cliches of rock and roll lifestyle are kind of there, right? But it was what was so invigorating and other than getting to see all of my favorite music 4 times a week, what was so invigorating for it that I didn't really even know that I needed in my life was I went from hammering out PowerPoints and decks and, conference rooms and big important meetings to, literally pushing cases as a roadie and, cleaning trash bins and picking recyclables up and, trying to figure out how to, hook a water station up, in, random stadiums around the world. It was a very much a, get on the ground and get dirty kind of moment for me. And
right.
Again, just what a wonderful kind of break, mentally, physically. And that was a huge, just a huge memorable part of it. I think the other, highlight, honestly, I mentioned earlier is this is a tough point in the world. No matter where you are, there's a lot of reasons to be kind of down, whether you want to be frustrated about climate or, just kind of disturbed about, race, sexual harassment, politics, whatever it may be. You stand in a stadium filled with 50, 60, 70,000 people, in Europe and throughout the States, all around the world. There's so much joy out there. There's so much happiness. There's just, I think I needed that, and I wish I could gift that to a lot of people, just to kind of feel better about, where we're at, from a humanity standpoint. I just had some really memorable moments of interactions with complete strangers that, will stick with me forever.
So looking back then, looking back at that, what was the highlight of the moment that, if you could like almost capture one moment from that, what would it be?
From the tour experience? Yeah. Oh man. There's one story that I'll try to give a shortened version of it. We were doing some work, with fans before the shows, nothing too complicated, just a little chat about the environment and what we were doing behind the scenes to lighten the environmental load, having some fun and some giveaways and that kind of stuff. Pretty pro forma for your average concert. And I had a little boy, a 12-year-old boy, come up to our booth, and he had a U2 shirt on, and he was clearly, just a big fan, and he was also very clearly nervous. And so I just started talking with him, kind of loosened him up a little bit, and his mom was kind of pushing him to talk to me. And, he slowly pulled out his wallet and took out this piece of paper, that was a letter from the Edge. And,
wow.
and this letter was very personal, and it was very congratulatory to this young boy for all he had done to raise some money for a local charity using the power of music. And the last line of this letter said, "I hope I get to meet you someday." And this kid kind of very sheepishly kind of gave me the letter and said, I don't know if this is possible, but I thought I'd ask. And for anybody that's worked in in the concert space or as a roadie, we don't necessarily have that kind of access, right? So it's not like we can just go down and walk into the wardrobe and say like, "Hey, Edge, I found this kid upstairs. He'd love to meet you." It's not really how it works. But nonetheless, I had some recycled guitar strings down in my kit that I thought would be a nice gift for the kids. So I went down there, and I happened to run into the security guard for the band and showed him this letter and said, "This kid's amazing. I just thought I'd show you the letter." And sure enough, man, within the hour, that kid was in the dressing room getting a photo with the Edge and got VIP ticket upgrades. And he came back and found me during the intermission, just bawling his eyes out. His mom and dad were just incredibly grateful. That alone was amazing, and everybody on the crew, a lot of people on the crew heard that story and just were really touched by it. What was even more profound was 3 shows later, I actually saw them again, and they had texted me and they said, "Hey, we'd love to give you something." And so I found them, and again, very grateful, and very emotional kind of reunion. And so they handed me this letter, and this kid had suffered from a medical issue growing up, and the letter explained how the parents had used the only thing this kid responded to when he was a baby and a toddler through his therapy was music, in particular Achtung Baby, another infamous U2 album. Literally U2, per the letter, U2 changed this kid's life, and that moment of getting him to meet the Edge was like, that was meeting Superman for him. So, again, there's a lot of ways marketers and PR guys, we sit in rooms and plaster up these ideas about these, crazy campaigns we're going to run for whatever initiative. You couldn't capture gold like that if you tried. And again, had we not been out there, talking about the environment and just having some fun, that kid doesn't have an opportunity to meet a Superman. And, that's going to stick with me for a very long time. And it's going to keep me going here. So definitely the highlight for sure.
That's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. What an incredible story. Wow. So that was the tour. And you say that ended in full last year. So here we are in February 2018. What's kind of been you've kind of joined up with forces with Mike Martin, all that. What's sort of been happening kind of since the end of the tour, and kind of where do you see the next kind of few steps kind of going, as it were?
Yeah, so affecting what Mike has built, and now I'm very happy to be a part of, is it's all about the intersection of culture and impact. So we are using we're very passionate about creating opportunities for progressive change that combine the power of music, art, and culture in a way that kind of motivates people to take action. And we work very extensively within the music business. Obviously, we've got some U2, believe it or not, going back out on tour this spring. I won't be the roadie this time around going out with them, but we do have some exciting things going on. We've actually just through the Joshua Tree, in a partnership with the band and Live Nation, literally just started a new startup that is designed to go after one of the uglier sides of the live event music business, which is the 50 million or so plastic cups, single-use plastic cups that get thrown on stadium floors and festival grounds around the world every year. So we've got a whole new business model that we just launched last month, and have signed on a couple bands that are pretty going to help us out with that, and that's very exciting.
Amazing.
We've also just had an amazing new client that we've kicked off in the last few months. Another one that's truly transformed my life. Actually, we're very deeply entrenched in the exploding vegan and plant-based movement right now. So we're doing some great new movement campaigns with some of the folks that are leading some of the innovation around plant-based diets and getting more people to get on the kind of the healthier diet and lifestyle that comes with a non-meat and dairy consumption. So that's very exciting as well. So, we're all about, just doing what we can, man, to promote really sound, smart, innovative ways to reorient our lifestyles that, doesn't destruct the planet, and trying to have a heck of a lot of fun doing it.
Hey, you got to love that. If you can combine fun with impact and kind of effect, then that's the golden formula, right?
It is indeed.
Fantastic. So this is all great, and I think what I love about your story, Chris, is you're a real kind of life example of someone who is, we hear, we've heard for years, follow your passion and all that kind of stuff, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But here you are doing it and making, and I love the sound of the startup, because let's face it, the effects of plastic is very topical right now. So
yes.
So I mean, can we dive into that a little bit and see what kind of stuff you're doing
Sure.
around that? So what's the idea? As you say, millions of cups.
Yeah. So for your listeners that are in the UK and Europe, this is actually an idea that is already in play, also in play in some festivals in the US, but it's real simple. It's a refillable cup program. We work with artists to license cups that fans can buy when they arrive on a site, whether that's a stadium show or a festival. It's branded with that tour logo, so say the Joshua Tree logo. You pay a couple bucks for the cup. You use that cup throughout the night. You can refill it, get as many beers as you want. And then either you can take the cup home or you can give it back and we'll give you your money back. So instead of, if you're going to drink 3 or 4 beers or whatnot at a show and have to get a new cup every time, this kind of gets those single-use plastics totally out of the way. And if you choose it, it gives you a little nostalgic kind of souvenir item. What's super cool about, what we're doing with it, is we're working with some great new bio resin manufacturers. So our cups this year that we'll be putting on tour are actually made from tapioca and cornstarch and a couple other blends, total fossil fuel free.
Yep.
So we're, this is just a whole new way to kind of disrupt that plastic supply chain that just gets funneled into these massive stadiums and event sites. And ultimately, frankly, where we're going with it is, ultimately what we'd love to be able to pull off is, regenerative plastics for live events. So, your plastic cups and utensils and anything else on site there that can be recycled gets turned into, next year's concert T-shirts or, event banner. Again, just trying to get into that reusable, regenerative space and bring that kind of supply chain, bring those solutions into that supply chain that goes on for those large-scale events around the world.
Wow, that would be amazing. And what I love about that is it's like you're taking the friction out of the process. As we said earlier, I think sometimes people kind of think, well, I'd like to do something, but I don't know what to do, or it's, as sad as it sounds, it's almost too much effort. But you're kind of almost reducing the friction to allow people to participate. Yeah,
again, make it fun, make it provocative, make it easy, make it memorable. This is, these are the things that, I think a lot of times we forget, and sometimes particularly within the more activist ends of either the environmental or even vegan communities, it's great when you're passionate and you're already there, but sometimes you gotta, take a step back and bring the masses along with you. And, that's not going to be done by just scholarly, well-educated debates. It's going to be, you got to be a little bit more creative. And ultimately, I think what as we're doing with the cups, we've got to find ways to just interrupt that supply chain, create new business models, really kind of catalyze, new entrepreneurs and new innovators. And to me, that's the hope for a more climate friendly future.
Wow. I love that. So let's kind of bring this back to you, as it were. That was your journey. This is you, and I'm kind of just keen to kind of explore, because you're definitely our classic definition of as a maverick, as it were. So you're up to lots of stuff in the world, lots of energy, lots of kind of stuff going on, and all that. Let's kind of bring it down to what do you do kind of on a daily or on a regular practice to kind of keep you kind of focused and motivated, but also keep your energy going? And what's your self-care, as it were?
Well, lately, not particularly good self-care, I would say, just because we've been on, rocket ship ride. So for anybody that has worked Asia hours, as it were, my day is typically really, really early morning start, really, really late night conference calls, and sneaking a little bit of fitness and or sleep in the middle of the day. And that tends to be the routine. Having, gone through this journey, and then also, having this great new collaboration with our partner in the vegan space, I've actually gone plant-based myself in my diet. So I'm actually really, really energized by exploring a whole new way to think about food in my life, which I honestly hadn't necessarily given a lot of priority to, other than, loving great food and going out to great restaurants. But, really thinking about the things that are going into your body, and looking at, new recipes and new ways to just think about food consumption has just been a really new, fascinating kind of part of my routine in my life. Other than that, just trying to stay inspired and looking at untraditional vehicles. I mean, I think just kind of, you can become a policy wonk a lot in these spaces, and, trying to step out of that and look at what's going on in the artistic community, who's out there that's really like breaking new ground, whether it's in the visual arts, the graphic design field, cinema and theater, and literary, and just trying to keep myself, as creatively inspired as I can across the board.
Great. Well, I mean, on that note then, I mean, you're clearly a guy with a lot of energy, a lot of passion, but who does creatively inspire you? You're in that space of like art and culture meeting with impact. So who are the inspirations for you?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think I remember you asking me this question back when we talked a few months ago, and I gave you a different answer. It's interesting. I'm now as part of this transformation with Mike and this partnership with Mike. We're in the process of moving out of Hong Kong and returning to the States, and this will be breaking news for most of my friends and family that listen to this, because we haven't told anybody yet. But we will be moving back to the States this spring. Yeah, exactly. So I'm actually, instead of looking at, really top tier, the usual kind of suspects, the innovators like Elon Musk and, the folks that are, just doing amazing work within the food movement, I'm really going local. I'm really trying to reconnect with, students that are coming out of design schools, and staying attuned to like emerging photographers and, up and coming musicians that are just getting started. So I'm really trying to tap into that spirit a little bit more. Just found the energy really eye-opening. So there's just a whole new roster of folks that have been introduced to my life out of Minneapolis, which is where we're going to be moving to. Yeah.
So you're moving back just after the big chill, as it were, then, by the sounds of it.
Just after what I hope to be another Super Bowl victory from my beloved New England Patriots. Yes.
Oh, Chris. Well, that's a different topic for a different interview, I think.
Yeah, right. Different podcast. Yeah.
I love that. So just because I love specifics, as it were. So if you were able to give a shout out to one of the new generation of kind of artists, design students, whatever, that's really inspired you, who would you give a shout out to?
Yeah, musically, we just did an amazing project with a band called Magic Giant, so kind of an up and coming band that kind of hit a little bit of the radar last year. Great program we just did with a client, Cliff Bar, where they did a surprise concert on a tram, a ski gondola that's Snowbird in Utah. A lot of fun, really passionate about climate and sustainability, but also just a super fun band. And then David Young out here in Asia in the food space. I wouldn't say necessarily he's unknown or up and coming. He's pretty well established, but what he's doing to completely reorient the food supply chain through the Green Mondays organization and Green Common, bringing Beyond Burger and a lot of other plant-based proteins into the heart of, let's be honest, Peking duck country out here in Hong Kong, Canton. Pretty provocative, pretty amazing. So there's two ends of the spectrum for you.
Awesome. That's amazing. And I'll make sure that we include the links in the show notes for those as well. So let's kind of come back to kind of some of the stuff that's kind of brought you here, as it were. So kind of looking back, you've had kind of this journey to where you are now. What's kind of like the biggest obstacle maybe that you've faced since kind of moving into this space, or kind of during your career, and kind of how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think the biggest obstacle early on in this whole thing was in the course of this past year, is letting go of maybe some of the financial handcuffs. What I mean by that is, going on the road with you two, amazing, provocative, life-changing, didn't make anywhere near what I was making back in my comfy corporate agency gig, right? So I think there's a lot of ways that you start entering kind of a purposeful path, and your financial calculus changes in your life. Maybe you're making a lot less money, or maybe your money flows in a different way, or it can be very disruptive. And I think there's a huge fear factor that comes with that. It certainly was for me for a very long time. Oh my God, how am I going to survive if I'm not just making X dollar or getting X increase year on year? We all are motivated by money at some degree, but I think once you're able to break free of just being so handcuffed by your current compensation and willing to jump in and take that risk and just figure it out, you suddenly realize that the world doesn't end. You can restructure your life very quickly and realize a different sense of happiness that you probably even realized was possible. I think, that's probably been the biggest challenge. Honestly, now the biggest challenge other than that I've had is just, trying to find a little bit of balance in my fitness and my sleep. It's really easy to work hard all day long because I'm just loving what I'm doing, and I just don't want to set it down. So good problem to have, but at some point here I should probably go for a run so I don't become a marshmallow. But finding that balance would be good.
Cool, awesome. So if we, again, looking back, so that's some great stuff that I think so many people who are listening will resonate with. But as you've kind of looked at this and kind of, let's face it, we have influential figures along the way in our journey and all that kind of stuff. I'm kind of curious, what's the kind of best piece of advice you've been given along the way, as it were, that's kind of helped you along?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily advice as much as it is a philosophy. Soon after moving out here to Hong Kong, I did quite a bit of work in Japan and was introduced to Ikigai, which I believe Mavericks maybe has already done a little. We
love a bit of Ikigai.
if for those that don't know it, get on it, look at it, study it, and believe it. Because if that's been my compass through this is really it's certainly been my North Star through the course of this year, and it's led me to some pretty provocative and powerful places. So I think that's been the biggest advice I'd pass on is go find yourself some ikigai.
So, and again, for those that don't know, I mean, we do talk about a lot of Mavericks, but what from your perspective is ikigai? What's it meant to you? What is it? How do you live it on a daily basis, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's paraphrasing it. I mean, I think it's conscious alignment. If you're consciously aligning your life, all facets of your life, your professional life, your personal life, your spiritual or faithful life, if you're consciously aligning all aspects of your life to what is truly your deep passion and your purpose, you will realize a sense of fulfillment, happiness, joy, stability, and again, just a different level, I think, of just awareness and grounding. So I think probably too long of a paraphrase for ikigai, but I think conscious alignment is what I always go back to.
I love that. Absolutely love that. So from that point of view, if that's the philosophy you've taken on, if we had a maverick just starting out on their journey, whether they're kind of a younger person or someone who's at one of those pivot moments, maybe slightly later on in life, what wisdom would you give them starting out?
Yeah, I think it's old school, but it's, get out that 4-quadrant grid, what's low risk, low reward, what's high risk, high reward, what's in that top right box, and whatever is in there is going to be the answer for you. So, follow that aggressively. It's funny when I look back on myself doing that exercise, and I kind of go through that motion again in my head. When I sat down, that felt like high risk to me because of all of the trappings, right? All the things I was shackled by. It felt like that was a huge risk for me. Looking back now, having poured myself into that path, my entire definition of what risk is completely changed. So even when you're sitting there and you're kind of trying to figure out, okay, how do I take that pivot, and how do I, where do I go next, and how do I even begin? Yes, I would say start out with that kind of that map, what's in that top right box, but know that even though that may seem like daunting risk at the time, within no time at all, that's going to seem like nothing. So push yourself, push even bigger on the risk curve. It's a big, forgiving world full of people that want to support you, and when you kind of leap out and you just go for it, you're going to find a lot of people that are there to guide you, and it's okay, right, to take that big leap.
Well, and kind of what I almost hear there, and I think a narrative that I think I've heard through your story is, it's, as you say, you can sort of map it out at the beginning of what you think it is, but that's just literally the first step or the first chapter, right? It's almost, your journey has definitely emerged with each step you've taken, and it sounds like it's quite different now to maybe where you would envision last May, for example.
Yeah, absolutely true. Absolutely true.
So awesome. So just a couple of kind of last questions, and these are always I always leave the big ones till last, as you may remember. But let's kind of talk about legacy and kind of what you'd like to see change in the world, as it were. And I think we kind of already have a flavour of this. But if there were no limitations in the world, if you could wave the magic wand and change one thing about the world, what would that be? And what would be your first step towards it?
I think I gave you a different answer back in London on this, and it's going to be a repetition a little bit. If I could wave one wand, I'd get everybody to on a path on a plant-based diet. Again, I'm a big climate guy. That's what I think is the most pressing issue facing humanity today. 51% of climate emissions are coming from our industrial agriculture, and just the way that we are consuming our food and sustaining ourselves. And we can solve that very easily. We can solve that and live healthier, stronger, longer lives, which I think is what is a universal truth around the world. That's what we all want, right? Healthier, stronger, longer living life. So again, I would encourage, if it's getting into the meatless Monday scene, or starting out vegetarian, or just eating one less egg a week, start the path. It has a massive ripple effect, and I think I'm just super excited by the amount of innovation and entrepreneurial just drive that is coming out of the food innovator space in the plant-based movement. So that's my one wand.
If there were one or two easy steps to ease someone's toe into the pool of plant-based eating, as it were, what would you recommend?
So I would say, if you want to get kind of wonky on it and kind of inspired as well by what's happening, what's out there, there's a great new book by Kathy Freston called Clean Protein. That would be kind of a recommended read for one. But I also, for you, Chris, I would say go down to your local market and find either a Beyond Burger or an Impossible Burger and bring it home and throw it on the grill and eat it. And I think your idea of what is coming and what is already here, frankly, in terms of a new plant protein is going to change dramatically. Once you kind of get into kind of the plant-based and you start to kind of alleviate some of those fears about bland diet and choice and taste and convenience, it's definitely reorienting. You got to come up with some new tricks, but it's pretty quick. What I think, at least my journey has been, I've seen this countless other folks as well that I've talked to. Within 4 or 5 days, you're going to be sharper. You're going to feel great. You're going to sleep better. You're going to be more mentally kind of acute. You're going to have higher degrees of energy. So the kind of the physical benefits are so quick and rewarding that, you'll get hooked pretty quick.
Cool. And what I really, those are some really specific things that I, or indeed anyone else can listen to this, can go out and do and like start that journey as well. And I think you're right. The hook is pretty good. So, okay. So let's come to the final question, which I think I stumped you with this one last time. So I'm giving you fair warning now. And this is the question I ask every guest. And that is, what is the question that you haven't been asked during this conversation that you would have liked to have been asked, and how would you answer it?
You did stump me on this question last time, and you've sort of stumped me again. I think, I think the question, particularly on climate, that always comes up, comes up a lot, is either one or two variations of it. Either it's why do you care so much when you're only one person, right? So that's one variation of it. So it kind of gets to where you just were a second ago, like I'm just one person. Why bother? What kind of real change really can I have on such a daunting and wide scaling issue? And other variations of that are, climate is one thing, but what about a litany of other? What about the refugee crisis? What about the threat of terrorism? What about a number of other really pressing issues that are on kind of the global psyche, if you will? How could you possibly say climate is the most important issue facing humanity when all these other things are staring at us in the face?
If there was one message you could give to people out there around that, exactly as you said, I'm one person, what can I do, kind of thing. What would that one thing be?
Yeah, it took me a long time to get to this answer myself. Do it for yourself. Don't be. I think I swear I'm gonna start a little climate therapy group for kind of sustainability folks that work really hard on these issues and get down and get depressed and frustrated. We definitely need a support group for each other. But At the end of the day, not to be selfish about it, but, do it for yourself. When you live your life the way that is aligned with how you think about the world today. So if you live your life with as little of an impact as possible, trying to disrupt supply chains where you can, trying to eat better, on the vegan side of things, do it for yourself. When you do it for yourself, then your energy goes up and you're inspired and you start talking to other people, that ripple effect happens. And that's the best we can all do is, and I think that, moving the masses will happen as a result of that. But if you get too kind of, wound up in what it's going to take to move 8 billion people towards, a climate reality, again, it can be pretty daunting, pretty frustrating, but just center in yourself, and the rest will take care of itself.
Awesome. And what a great message to end on. So thank you, Chris, for your time with us today. And your whole story it's really inspiring from the point of view of, someone who's just following their passion and surfing that wave, as it were.
My pleasure, man. Always a treat to talk to you and support the Maverick community.
Oh, brilliant. And thanks, Mavericks, for listening in on this interview. I hope you found some inspiration here. I know I certainly have. And we'll see you on the next podcast. Bye for now. Hey, listen up. Don't go yet. Did you get something meaningful out of this episode? Well, the most meaningful thing that you can do right now is to go and leave a review on iTunes, because those reviews are what keep us here. And please make sure to share and to subscribe to this podcast. Finally, are you unleashing your superpowers? Well, if so, show us on Instagram with the hashtag Mavericks Unlimited, and we'll see you over there. And with that, thanks so much for listening to the Mavericks Unlimited podcast at mavericsunlimited.com. Bye for now.